Let's go ahead and begin some quiet sitting practice. Beginning that process of becoming free of the momentum of our day, whether that inertia was simply doing nothing, sitting still and becoming stagnant, or it was running around in an exhausted fashion. Whatever kind of cycle we have going, we let that fall away, and we fall into this quiet in-between space, the middle ground, where we are at rest, but vividly aware. Our mind is quiet and clear. Our body is full and present and ready, but still. Our emotions are open and expressive, but quiet and peaceful. With each exhalation, through the mouth if you'd like, softening further, a new layer of tension is released, uncovering the softness beneath. Perhaps noticing whatever spot in your body is the most soft and open and through at the moment. Allowing those areas of softness to spread. Using those areas to teach the spots on all sides, inside and outside. Just a few more minutes. When your mind wanders away, allow it to relax back into the present moment. If your emotional system starts getting stirred up, simply let go of whatever it was that was doing the stirring and let yourself return to center. Continuing to relax the body, at first in the most obvious way, this or that major joint or muscle, and then the more subtle layers, maybe the space around your eyes, behind your eyes, maybe the base of your tongue, maybe getting out of the way of your breath. Becoming open, ready for practice. When you're ready, you'll begin to warm up your hands in preparation for softening around the head and the face. And before we begin, and I take my headphones off, I want to let anyone know who is joining us perhaps for the first time or is still uncertain about how to practice this particular Qigong massage series. There is an introductory video down below in the comments section. And if you click on that link, you can learn more about how we practice this set, why, and what we are trying to accomplish with it. And that will make it more easy for you to join us during these live sessions. beautiful rainy day here today. We've had snow up here the last couple of days, but the rain all morning washed it away. And all the plants that are waking up for spring are very pleased about the whole process. Good afternoon, Mr. Dell. Thank you for joining us. And welcome to everybody who I can't see, unless you put yourself into the chat box. I cannot know that you're here, but I see that we have a lot of people. And so if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat box. We have a number of people here that have gotten quite a bit of experience now in this series. And so it's nice to connect with them and to see if there's any help that we can offer together. Today, emphasizing soft hands, soft wrists, and forearms. We spent a lot of time working on this release of the hands. So after a month and a half, gosh, keep going, almost 2 months of practice with this set, our hands get pretty soft and nimble, warm and flexible, hopefully. And now we want to allow that softness to extend up toward the elbow in this whole space. And so as we move, even if you're able to apply pressure now through your hands in a way that's soft and easy rather than rigid, hopefully you are. Now notice whether or not you're holding further up. Oftentimes, if we soften one place, we just transfer that tension a little bit further up or down. And so we want to explore upward how we can let this go, being easy. And we want this quality of, even if we're, for instance, making a fist and pulling on our arms, there's this quality you probably cannot see very well in the camera. That if I am to make a fist, I'll put my hand here to make it easier to see, we tend to close in. So you can see how my arm is shrinking toward my hand. This closes in. And that's the wrong direction. That's everything compacting and tightening. Instead, what we want is to have this quality of the hand lengthening out and around. So again, so if I close in, you can see how everything shrinks in toward my elbow. But I can also create the same movement, softening long and around. Everything reaches and lengthens around a circle. And so you enclose and put pressure on something in that way. So as you're gripping and moving and doing these points, see if you can lengthen your hands to soften around and create pressure that way. And this is one of the reasons I brought this over here, is this is an example of one of those training tools that we may use. We may fill this with water or sand. And as we practice, what people tend to do is they try to hold on to this thing and they try to lift it and squeeze. And that's the wrong direction of practice. Instead, we actually want to soften further. We soften around the lip of the pot and continue softening around so that all of this stays relatively easy. And you can practice that on something like grabbing a glass of tea or water. And as you grab it, don't close in around it. Instead, let yourself lengthen around the glass or the mug. Continually softening rather than closing harder and harder all of the time. Then those patterns end up stuck in the body and we have to undo them in a class like this. And so instead, begin developing safer, easier habits of letting go. You'll be surprised at how effective it can be. Softening down the arm, using whatever hand shape feels the best for you. The palm, base of the thumb, fingertips, or the knuckles. Remember that your awareness and the pressure is soaking in just beneath the level of the skin, on top of the musculature, in that space in between. So don't push too hard or you'll move right past that layer we're reaching. And remember, if you have more breast tissue than I do, perhaps spend extra time releasing and relieving all of the glandular structures and things that may become congested up here. Shoulders, upper arm, elbow soft, wrist released, hand and fingertips soft. Just being gentle. Remember that if this is tiring for your shoulder, first relax your shoulder. Don't push it down, just let it go and see if that helps. And if you still need extra aid, you can use your other hand to help lift this shoulder so that you're not having to tighten this. And again, if you're having sensitive breast tissue at the moment, you can just use the same arm to reach back here and work that. Whatever it is that works best for you. And then easing all the way down the upper arm, washing the arm. After a couple months of this practice, hopefully not only are your hands softer, but perhaps your mind is now soft enough to sink into this space beneath the skin, the in-between space, the empty place around the tissues through which most of the life happens. If your mind is still feeling too chaotic, it might just be that you're exhausted, because it does require a bit of qi to be rooted. But if you are feeling rested enough and your mind is being chaotic, think of it as a kind of agitation. And rather than trying to control the agitation with force, see if you can relax and soften the agitation, softening into presence. We do the same for our body and our breath. Releasing these several points here at the top of the forearm, large intestine 11, and then 10 and 9. Today I'm using my palm that feels best. You may use the base of your thumb or your fingertips or your other thumb, maybe your knuckles. Find a way that helps you feel the softest. Remember that as you stimulate both points on either side of the wrist with your hand, avoid clamping and squeezing your hand like you have crab claws. Instead, lengthen around the circle so that they come to meet at these points, but through softening long, if you can. It's a thing that you have to discover in the beginning, but it's a very different kind of mechanic for using your hands. I've had ZhiCheng Shifu clamp my hands as hard as he can, and it causes no problem. And then he wraps around my hand and it drops me to the floor. So there's a lot of power in this softness and expansion. But we have to make room for it by softening and letting go. Trying to place my hand in a way that's easy to see which points I'm doing. You can put your hands wherever you'd like. If you feel awkward copying one of my postures, it's possibly just that my posture is awkward because I'm trying to do it in a way that makes it easier for you to see what I'm doing. But you need to find a way to do it for yourself that feels most comfortable in the moment. Every day will probably be a little bit different. That's why we listen. I like working with whichever arm and shoulder is a little bit less tense first. So for instance, I tend to carry more tension on my right side because I'm right-handed and I do a lot of carpentry work and work with the swords, mostly with my right arm, although I try to use both. And so when I soften my left arm and my left hand more deeply, then I bring that extra softness over to the side that needs it a little bit more. So I've increased the medicine in this hand. And now I can spend time here relieving this area that needs a little bit extra work. Maybe I'll spend 10% longer on the more difficult side than I would on the side that needs a little bit less work. You want to find that capacity for yourself. Letting the softness soak in with your awareness, the sense of friendliness toward your body. And that soaks into the tissues as well. You're far more likely to let go than if you're feeling stressed and intense at yourself. Make sure that you take the time to reach all the way around as best you can without causing tension. Spending extra time with this lung 5 point if you've been dealing with a cough recently, as I know that this is the season for that. Or if you're a smoker, this is a good one to help reduce the heat in the lungs that comes from smoking. Doesn't matter what you smoke, it's not good for you. It's like living in a very smoggy town. It's just not good for you. And so if you do choose to continue taking this toxic stuff and heat into your lungs, which are very delicate, in Chinese we actually refer to it as the delicate viscous. And so if you do choose to heat it up and cause a bit of damage, then maybe spend time every day relieving some of that heat with that lung 5 point. Also, this large intestine 11 point will be helpful for that. Or you could just stop. We value our lungs, quality of our air. Continuing to soften your hands, release your forearms. If you carry a lot of tension in your forearms, you can do more than just these points that we focus on. Like on the upper arm, you can spend time warming and releasing all the way around, if that feels good to you. Always include special focus on the places that you need the most. I added this to the set simply because it is such a common area of pain for people. sense of expansion and letting go all the way from the wrist through the palms to the tip of the thumb, the tips of the fingers. It's as though your hands fill up with water or air. They pressurize and you can create movement and a kind of gentle force through the fingertips without having to squeeze or condense your hands. And soft, wrists soft. For you Qigong or Taiji people, as your elbow comes up, your shoulder blade sinks down the back, and then as your hand flows down, your chest sinks, chi sinks down your waist. This is sending energy down your back, down your waist, or down your belly, I should say, chest and into your dantian. So both sink. Yeah, I agree with your Shifu Del that it is, if you are going to choose to take some kind of drug, self-medicated drug, then at least take it in a way that's a little bit less damaging for the body, because there's usually several routes that you can bring it into your system, and choose whatever it is that's the least harmful. That's a good general rule. First, do less harm if you can. And soft, letting that softness soak in to the solar plexus, as well as spread up toward the elbow. So this whole section of your arm is radiating this gentle warmth, friendly touch, and that energy, that qi, soaks into the body. Your awareness soaks into that point. And that warmth and softness, kindness spreads through the tissues in this area. Very powerful method. And then moving down to that space halfway between the solar plexus and the navel. Zhongwan, this central granary point, sometimes also called the yellow palace, just this middle space here. Relieving tension here is good, but for this point in particular, it's really nourishing to allow that sense of warmth and liveliness to soak in, to energize this point, to strengthen digestion. Your awareness sinking in a little bit deeper here to find those spaces around the ribs, beneath the skin, on top of the musculature, around the bone. Even though your fingertips are sinking in here, in between those intercostal spaces, the places between the ribs, don't grip with your fingers. Just lengthen around the circle so that your fingers make this gentle, round quality without effort. Softening your hands, softening your palms, continuing to release the wrists, the forearm, all around the elbow. And of course, your shoulders are soft. Take as long as you like in any of these areas, especially if you're finding yourself bound up with difficult emotions. These are areas where they can often become stuck. So by helping to relieve this and to help circulate the chi, that can often help the emotions settle or be released from your body. Easing down the ribs, settling toward the navel. All this extra chi releases down, settles in the dantian, emphasizing this downward and consolidating direction. You're not trying to push chi up. Almost never trying to push chi up. Both directions. Same thing, this sense of sinking down the center line, consolidating behind the navel. Gentle circles, being especially gentle and careful around sensitive breast tissue, but this can be a useful healing movement for that as well. Simply being careful. A good one to incorporate for anybody who does regular breast tissue massage, which of course I do recommend for people that have more breast tissue than I do. It's good to end with something like this so that you're not just pushing more energy into a very local area, but allowing everything to spread and then sink down. Warming and releasing these points along the navel. Just for people who are learning the points and the channels, Ren 8 is the navel itself, stomach 25, spleen 15. This is the line of the abdominal musculature, spleen 15. And then in between the navel and that point, stomach 25. These are wonderful for helping with constipation, diarrhea conditions, generally creating movement through the abdomen when it's needed. Circling the navel 36 times, spiraling outward to cover the whole abdomen. 24 back in the opposite direction. Letting the softness of your forearms, your wrists, your palms, your fingers connect and communicate with the abdomen, allowing it to soften. Your awareness penetrating into that space just beneath the skin on top of the muscle, the empty space we've been talking about, but also somewhat aware of that space deeper inside. Just gently aware, not trying to push your mind. That also draws your chi up. Just allow your awareness to settle following the movement, relaxing. At least a few breaths of quiet meditation, contemplation, your awareness accumulating in that space beneath the palms. Noticing that as your qi sinks and your body settles, it becomes easier for your mind to become still and quiet. In the Taoist classics, it talks about one part of stillness is one part of softness. One part of softness is one part of stillness. So as you start to let go, everything inside becomes more quiet. As you grip and tighten up, everything inside becomes more chaotic. They're the same process. So taking this time to simply release can change your whole life. Beautiful day. The ducks have come back up north. It's warming up enough for them. And they have decided to stop their migration pattern here in our pond. So they're down there making a ruckus, shouting at each other as they have a pool party. Softening that inguinal crease, emphasizing that movement as you release it down toward the feet, through your legs, sinking down. This point here is in the center. These points are wonderful for unlocking this relationship between above and below so that you can relate to the earth. Softening your hands, softening your wrists. Since we've been chatting about it, let's try doing a few more than usual in this area. Keeping your shoulders, your wrists, your elbows, all the way to your fingertips soft. Taking a break if your arms start to feel tight. We don't want to practice tension. You can shake them out if you need to. So I'm doing 60. Let me know later how this feels for you, if it's too many at this point, or if it feels easier. Eventually, we want to be able to do 60 without any sense of tension or clenching in the arms. Remember that you can move at any pace that you feel comfortable with. If it starts to tire you out, you can do fewer, or take breaks, or just try to soften further. Eventually, if you soften enough, this feels like no effort at all. Always let go between so that you don't carry tension between one and the other. Warming and easing. I'm doing 36 again in both directions. Keeping your hands, your wrists soft. If your hands are very stiff, it's a very different feel than if there's this loose, gentle, watery quality to your palms. This point above the inside of the knee on this part of the quadriceps muscles. You can also allow your fingers to play over the inside cheek of the leg here. I'm just sitting like this to make it easy to see. You can sit however you like. Are you able to feel a kind of soft flexiness in your wrists all the way up to where your elbow is at? Instead of gripping it and holding it tight and wielding your arms like they're sticks, see if you can allow them to be fluid and flexible. "60 times in that space beneath the knee." All of these will eventually increase to 100 as well. We won't have time in the class, but perhaps you can practice it on your own that way. But only as long as it does not add tension into your system. We only practice softness. Otherwise, we'll just get better at tension. We want to get better at softness. You want these strong tendons that you feel behind the knees to be a little less cable-like. They'll still be strong, of course, because they are cables, but you want them to have some give, some flexibility to them, because these areas of attachments themselves are softer and more open. Stomach 36, if you'd like. Warming that space just at the top of this muscle that runs along the shin. 1 hand's distance below the kneecap, more or less. Warming that whole area. You can use your fingertips. You can use your thumbs if you'd like, base of your thumb or your palms. Today the palms feel really good to me. Just as a reminder to make sure that you are not collapsing your back, dropping your neck, holding your breath. You simply flex comfortably from the hips, allowing all of this to be easy. And if that's not available to you at this point, because your body is doing whatever your body is doing, then find a different way to relate to the points. You can always do them one at a time. Just pressing hard enough to reach that space below the skin. And then these gallbladder 34 points, a little higher into the outside of stomach 36. And I'll do spleen 9 on the inside here at the same time. So I'll turn my foot in so you can see both sides at once. Hands are soft. Your elbows, your wrists, your palms and fingers are so soft that it allows extra circulation, so your hands heat up even more. And that warmth is transferred into the knees, letting it soak into this area. The knees are this big collection of sinew, bristle and bone all located together, and it gets damaged easily. And inside the joint, there isn't really it doesn't have its own way of reaching circulation, so you have to help it. Again, I'm doing these 60 times in both directions. You can always do more, eventually 100 times in both directions, or more. These were tremendously helpful to me during my several knee injuries throughout my life. If your mind wanders away, simply smilingly bring it back. Just be kind to yourself. It's okay if it wanders away. Just tight. Help it loosen up. Again, here, as when I was grabbing that pot, don't try to press your thumbs in or squeeze your hands. Simply lengthen through so that it's strong by virtue of being soft and connected, and allowing that softness to spread into the calf. If you grip and tighten and push into these areas, they just tighten back. The lesson they learn is to grip harder. It's like raising children. You model softness, friendliness, kindliness, love. If you model other things, they learn that lesson. Easing open the hands. Just a reminder for those of you who have been memorizing the various channels and vessels in the body to go through a quick review for yourself, just to keep them established in your brain. Remember that it is, in some ways, information that shapes how we see ourselves in the world. And the shape of that quality of our mind helps shape our intent, which is what shapes our chi flow, how we move, in part how we act. All of these things are related. So it's part of the reason to begin seeing the body as these interconnected lines. It changes how we move, how we see, how we think about it. And that over time sinks in and has a big impact. soft, easy. Your mind becoming more quiet, more settled. Your body becoming more full as it opens. Get your feet to wake up, to become more and more soft and flexible and fluid. I recommend buying some little devices of various levels of pressure and firmness for you to slowly open your feet around. In the beginning, people who have very stiff feet can practice stepping on a tennis ball, maybe a racquetball, something like that. Letting their feet wrap around it a little bit and using it to roll around and open up. And as your feet soften more and more, you can use harder objects because your feet will flex around them. Things like lacrosse balls or soda bottles, Coke bottles, those kinds of things. Or just anything you find lying around on the ground. Use your feet to pick up towels on the ground. Get them to become involved in your daily life as best you can. Your feet will thank you. Using your toes, grasping with your toes. I'm just using my hands to make it easier to see what's going on. Similarly, touching your feet, rounding your toes over the top. So your feet develop an arch and some strength in the center. If your feet start to spasm or clench, then just take a break. It can be useful for you to rub your feet like this. And again, one of the homework assignments that I like to give to everybody is that in bed in the morning, before you get out of bed, before you do anything, then take your time circling your toes, both directions, moving your feet side and side like this. Rub your feet a little bit, grip. Do all of this before you get out of bed. Wake your feet up, and that will make a really big difference in the health of your feet. Sitting quietly for a moment. If you'd like to lay flat on the ground, you've got space to do it, feel free to do so. I always try to be mindful of the time so that these classes don't just extend and extend. If you do more of one movement, you have to do less of others. But of course, on your own time, you can feel free to lengthen this set as much as you like. It's a very safe practice. As long as you end down lower in the body and at the dantian, then it's safe. And so if you'd like to continue resting and letting your chi settle, or if you want to finish doing some other practices like the teeth knocking, then feel free to do it. But otherwise, I will take a few questions and then finish for the day. Thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate you. Del, you're asking about the quivering of your lip and anything that runs through the body because of the nature of how we talk about the body in Chinese medicine. We can say that it's a channel condition. Something's happening in the channels. Usually if there's quivering, it's either a space that's been empty and frozen for a long time, waking up. But when it's in the upper body like that and it kind of comes and goes, then it's usually considered wind. And wind can come from the outside. If you've been outside in the wind, it can literally penetrate your channels and start an agitation. This area of your nervous system, the channel fills with wind. But because that's also in this area of this Ren vessel, the conception vessel, we want to be careful that, again, qi is not rushing up, because that's one of the symptoms of qi rushing upward, is quivering and things starting to happen in the upper body. And so you want to be extra gentle. Wind is one of the symptoms of qi rushing upward, just a thing to memorize. And so if you haven't been exposed to wind and it's not just some little thing, magnesium deficiency or something like that, that's easily solved, or you've been smiling too much or something like that. You started dating somebody new, you're smiling all the time, and now your muscles are tired, so they're shaking. Those kinds of things are fine. But if there's a genuine sudden shaking or quivering or strange movement happening, that's usually a symptom of wind from qi rushing upward. Just things moving too much, like the wind moving through the trees. And if that's showing up, then you want to be extra careful to close and make sure all of your qi sinks down so that you don't develop that problem. But it could be a lot of things. Any other questions before we head out? I will wait another minute or so on this beautiful day with the carousing ducks just down below. You probably can't hear them because these are so good at cutting out sound, but they're loud, louder than the ravens have been. I'm glad they feel safe here. A lot of those wildlife corridors have been cut off or removed so that the animals come back during their regular seasonal exchange and their spots are gone. They try to land in these areas that they've been landing for who knows how long. And now it's just rooftops or cars or a freeway or something. And I think it's very upsetting for them. So it's nice to create a safe, consistent space for them. I'm glad you liked it. Thanks, Steph. Yeah, springy is a good thing. Yeah, contemplation. It's difficult to use these words. Like there's the word. There's references to kind of like a protection swim. There's this, like you're holding a child and you're protecting it, or sometimes in the meditation stories they talk about if you had a wound, if you broke your arm or something and it was in a sling and you were walking through the mall, it was really busy. There was a a new iPhone was being released and you had to get by the Apple store and your arm was broken. People were just going mad everywhere. And so you sort of protect it. And there's this quality of, or often they use the example of I don't know if you've ever seen a hen over her egg. We've had lots of ducks and chickens over the years on the various farms that I've lived on. And they're really good brooding hens, the ones who take to it, who enjoy it. They will just be there and they'll kind of go, oh, and they won't go to the bathroom, they won't eat, they won't do anything. They're just there, protecting and paying attention. And you want this quality of just being settled, and you can say absorbed, but that term often gets taken into like a Buddhist, like a jhanic state, these particular kinds of states that are deep absorption where nothing else is happening. And for this kind of practice, you don't want that. You're trying to be balanced. Your awareness is here, but you're not trying to lose sense of the world or something like that. It's just, this is the center anchor. This is the bottom of the well, so to speak. Everything sinks down here. And so if you were to focus on, for instance, like you're calling it the transparency of beingness, the state of emptiness, this is a big subject, of course, but if I was to try to shorten it in a way that will probably make it completely wrong, all of your senses experience reality in different ways. And so, for instance, when your body awakens to freedom from self and openness and its true nature, there's this deep sense of softness and openness and freedom in your body that happens. It's no longer gripping onto old patterns. The nervous system is very calm. Your awareness is deeply embedded in your body. You are embodied. When your emotions are able to settle and be fully present, som, to be as open as they can be, the experience of that is, of course, deep contentment, a sense of peace, pervading peace, sometimes a kind of bubbling joy that comes from just being free, or these other qualities that are deep and without name, unconditional love, these kinds of things. This is just another sense organ. It's another way of you experiencing what's going on. They're not separate things. That just, my vision is different when I'm being completely distracted. My actual, how I see the world is completely foggy, and the world is sort of transparent and unreal, and I'm not really connected to anything. And then in those moments of clarity and awakening, everybody's had those moments. Suddenly colors are more vibrant. And you look over and you see, oh my gosh, I didn't even really see this thing before. Sure, I knew it was there, but now you see it. And your actual vision changes. We have all of these senses through our beingness, our humanness. Everything experiences that openness and oneness in different ways. When the mind wakes up to itself and you become free of ideas and the mind is very clear, that deep sense of clarity, what you're calling transparency of beingness, that quality of, well, you're free from an idea of self. You're free from all your ideas. You're simply present. The mind, as a sense organ, if we call it that, experiences the world in that particular shape. And so you want all of these various ways for your sense organs to experience the world, to find this deep sense of freedom, and then they experience them in the way that they experience them. And so when we're absorbed here, to use these words, when we're contemplating this space, most of our awareness is in this physical experience. If we focus too much on the way that our mind or our brain or our eyes are processing things or how we're hearing things, then it tends to draw our chi up into these spaces. So I want to use the sense organ of my body in this area to contemplate the moment, and this helps my chi to sink and our awareness to collect in this area, rather than being distracted by other things. In the way that if I was distracted by the sensations of my fingertips, my chi would probably move there. Or if I had an itch on my head and I was just paying attention all the time to my scalp. It's a physical sensation, but my chi is flowing to that area. We want it to flow down. So you pay attention to the senses here, rather than being distracted by your other sense organs, including your mind, and how they experience the world. I hope that's not too confusing, because it's all just our humanness and the different ways of experiencing it. Yeah, in this case, we're entering into that space by just tuning into this space here, the physical experience of that space. And then the body centers itself around that. But other practices do other things. It's just that for this practice, that's what we want. So I don't want to separate it by like Taoist and Buddhist, especially because in this system, we blend all of those qualities together. Taoism and Buddhism, the Yijia, they're all one family. And so we want everything to, we don't want to put those kinds of terms on it. Just pay attention to this space. That's all. If you start to put more labels onto it, that also pulls you into your head. So I hope that helps. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your practice. I'll go down and look at the ducks. They probably won't let me. Yeah, I know. You mentioned that your seafood is not like mixing those things, and there's certainly a lot of people that are, very pro one or pro the other. There's a lot of infighting between Taoists and Buddhists of various sects, and of course, there's even within Buddhism, there's Mahayana and Theravada and the Vajrayana, the Tibetan Buddhist sect, and there's a lot of self-hatred, we can say, within those systems. It's kind of interesting and funny how people take these things very seriously, but within this particular Zhichen whole reality sect of Taoism, of which the Longmen, the Dragon's Gate method, that's where most alchemical practices and Qigong methods are centered through. The whole reality part of it is that it includes, the wisdom of Buddhism, their meditative practices, concepts of being free in that sense, the alchemical and energetic traditions of older Taoist methods, the relationship with the body and the world around us. That's why it's the whole reality sect. And so that's part of that differentiation. And of course, there's purists in various systems who are like, stay away. But within this system, one of the things I like about it is that it's accepting of wisdom traditions everywhere, as long as they share the same understanding. And it's very beautiful. In my opinion, not being an expert in the world.